Hello, this is Shmuel Moshe, and you are listening to the weekly Parashahcast, the weekly Torah portion podcast where I read the weekly Torah portion and then provide my own interpretation based on the text. This week's weekly Torah portion is a little special. It is currently Pesach, or Passover, so the standard weekly Torah portion is on pause, and instead we have a special weekly Torah portion episode designated to the different readings that we'll be doing throughout the holiday of Pesach. So what we're going to do today is it's going to be a little bit different. I'm going to read each day's portion in completion and then provide summaries about the entire thing because, surprise, we have 8 days of portions to go through. So without further ado, let's go ahead and jump on in with my usual reminder. I am not a professional Torah scholar, just somebody who wanted to study Torah. We'll jump right on into the first day of Passover, Exodus chapter 12, verse 21. And I once again would also like to remind everybody, for those who want to follow along in English, I'm getting my translation from Chabad.org. Let's begin. Day 1, portions 1 through 5, starting with Exodus chapter 12, verse 21. Moses summoned all the elders of Israel and said to them, "Draw forth or buy for yourselves sheep for your families, and slaughter the Passover sacrifice. And you shall take a bunch of hyssop and immerse it in the blood that is in the basin, and you shall extend to the lintel and to the 2 doorposts the blood that is in the basin, and you shall not go out, any man from the entrance of his house until morning. The Lord will pass to smite the Egyptians, and he will see the blood on the lintel and the 2 doorposts. And the Lord will pass over the entrance, and he will not permit the destroyer to enter your houses to smite you. And you shall keep this matter as a statute for you and your children forever." Second portion, chapter 12, verse 25. "And it shall come to pass when you enter the land that the Lord will give you, as he spoke, that you shall observe this service. And it will come to pass, if your children say to you, 'What is this service to you?' you shall say, 'It is a Passover sacrifice to the Lord. For he passed over the houses of the children of Israel in Egypt when he smote the Egyptians, and he saved our houses. And the people kneeled and prostrated themselves. So the children of Israel went and did as the Lord commanded Moses and Aaron, so they did." Third portion, chapter 12, verse 29. "It came to pass at midnight, and the Lord smote every firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh, who sits on his throne, to the firstborn of the captive who is in the dungeon, and every firstborn animal. And Pharaoh arose at night, he and all his servants, and all the Egyptians, and there was a great outcry in Egypt, for there was no house in which no one was dead. So he called for Moses and Aaron at night, and he said, 'Get up and get out from among my people, both you as well as the children of Israel, and go, worship the Lord as you have spoken. Take also your flocks and also your cattle as you have spoken, and go. But you shall also bless me.' So the Egyptians took hold of the people to hasten to send them out of the land, for they said, 'We are all dead.' The people picked up their dough, and when it was not yet leavened, their leftovers bound in their garments on their shoulders. And the children of Israel did according to Moses' order, and they borrowed from the Egyptians silver objects, golden objects, and garments. The Lord gave the people favor in the eyes of the Egyptians, and they lent them, and they emptied out Egypt." Fourth portion, chapter 12, verse 37. "The children of Israel journeyed from Ramses to Sukkot, about 600,000 on foot, the men besides the children. And also a great mixed multitude went up with them, and flocks and cattle, very much livestock. They baked the dough that they had taken out of Egypt as unleavened cakes, for it had not leavened, for they were driven out of Egypt, and they could not tarry, and also they had not made provisions for themselves. And the habitation of the children of Israel that they dwelled in Egypt was 430 years. It came to pass at the end of 430 years, and it came to pass in that very day, that all the legions of the Lord went out of the land of Egypt. It is a night of anticipation for the Lord, to take them out of the land of Egypt. This night is the Lord's guarding all the children of Israel throughout their generations." Fifth portion, chapter 12 of Exodus, verse 43. "The Lord said to Moses and Aaron, 'This is the statute of the Passover sacrifice. No estranged one may partake of it. And every man's slave purchased for his money you shall circumcise him. Then he will be permitted to partake of it. A sojourner or a hired hand may not partake of it. It must be eaten in one house. You shall not take any of the meat out of the house to the outside, nor shall you break any of its bones. The community of Israel shall make it, and should a proselyte reside with you, he shall make a Passover sacrifice to the Lord. All his males shall be circumcised, and then he may approach to make it, and he will be like the native of the land, but no uncircumcised male may partake of it. There shall be one law for the native, and one for the stranger who resides in your midst. All the children of Israel did as the Lord had commanded. Moses and Aaron, so they did. It came to pass on that very day that the Lord took the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt with their legions." Simple enough. So that's the first day of Passover's reading, which would have taken place on the 15th of Nissan, April 23rd. And continuing just a quick summary, this is the story of how it all happened. Here we get the actual namesake of the holiday, the festival, Passover, Pesach, because the Spirit passed over the houses of the Hebrews, over the Israelites, right, and did not slaughter them, but it did slaughter all the others. The angel of death came and took the firstborn of every living thing that was not marked in one of these houses with the offering. So it's very interesting. The sacrifice itself, it seems to be almost like saying, no, you already got one from me. And the blood on the door is an indication of that. So the life was taken elsewhere. It's definitely one of the most intense and horrific experiences. Miraculous, yes, but also imagine just being in some place and suddenly every single firstborn dies. That's very scary. In any case, this is enough to get them out of Egypt. Pharaoh's had enough. He sends them out, and they're successful in being liberated by the Lord. Not that they weren't promised just as much, but this becomes a statute for all generations, the Passover sacrifice. Now we're going to go ahead and move on to the second day of Passover. The next day's Torah reading would be on the 16th of Nisan, starting with Leviticus chapter 22, verse 26. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, When an ox or a sheep or goat is born, it shall remain under its mother for 7 days. And from the 8th day onwards it shall be accepted as a sacrifice for a fire offering to the Lord. An ox or sheep you shall not slaughter it and its offspring in 1 day. And when you slaughter a thanksgiving offering to the Lord, you shall slaughter it so that it should be acceptable for you. It shall be eaten on that day. Do not leave it over until morning. I am the Lord. You shall keep my commandments and perform them. I am the Lord. You shall not desecrate my holy name. I shall be sanctified. Amidst the children of Israel, I am the Lord who sanctifies you, who took you out of the land of Egypt to be a God to you. I am the Lord. Chapter 23, verse 1. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, The Lord's appointed holy days that you shall designate as holy occasions. These are my appointed holy days. For 6 days work may be performed, but on the 7th day it is a complete rest day, a holy occasion. You shall not perform any work. It is a Sabbath to the Lord in all your dwelling places. Second portion, chapter 23, verse 4. These are the Lord's appointed holy days, holy occasions, which you shall designate in their appointed time. In the first month, on the 14th of the month, in the afternoon, you shall sacrifice the Passover offering to the Lord. And on the 15th day of that month is the festival of unleavened cakes. To the Lord you shall eat unleavened cakes for a 7-day period. On the first day there shall be a holy occasion for you. You shall not perform any work of labor. And you shall bring a fire offering to the Lord for a 7-day period. On the 7th day there shall be a holy occasion. You shall not perform any work of labor. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, and say to them, When you come to the land which I am giving you, and you reap its harvest, you shall bring the Kohen an omer of the beginning of your reaping. And he shall wave the omer before the Lord, so that it will be acceptable for you. The Kohen shall wave it on the day after the rest day. And on the day of your waving the omer, you shall offer up an unblemished lamb in its first year as a burnt offering to the Lord. Its meal offering shall be 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil, a fire offering to the Lord as a spirit of satisfaction. And its libation shall be 1/4 of a hin of wine. You shall not eat bread, flour made from parched grain, or fresh grain, until this very day, until you bring your God's sacrifice. This is an eternal statute throughout your generations in all your dwelling places. Third portion. Chapter 23, verse 15. And you shall count for yourselves from the morrow of the rest day, from the day you bring the omer as a wave offering, 7 weeks they shall be complete. You shall count until the day after the 7th week, namely the 50th day, on which you shall bring a new meal offering to the Lord. From your dwelling places you shall bring bread. Set aside 2 loaves made from 2/10 of an ephah. They shall be of fine flour, and they shall be baked leavened, the first offering to the Lord. And associate with the bread. You shall bring 7 unblemished lambs in their first year, 1 young bull and 2 rams. These shall be a burnt offering to the Lord, along with their meal offering and libations, a fire offering with a spirit of satisfaction to the Lord. And you shall offer up 1 he-goat and a sin offering, and 2 lambs in their first year as a peace offering. And the Kohen shall wave them in conjunction with the first offering bread, as a waving before the Lord. Along with the 2 lambs they shall be holy to the Lord, and belong to the Kohen. And you shall designate on this very day a holy occasion, it shall be for you. You shall not perform work of any labor. This is an eternal statute in your dwelling places throughout your generations. When you reap the harvest of your land, you shall not completely remove the corner of your field during your harvesting, and you shall not gather up the gleanings of your harvest. Rather, you shall leave these for the poor person and for the stranger. I am the Lord your God. Chapter 23, verse 23, fourth portion. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, In the 7th month on the 1st of the month it shall be a Sabbath for you, a remembrance of Israel through the shofar blast, a holy occasion. You shall not perform any work of labor, and you shall offer up a fire offering to the Lord. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, But on the 10th of this 7th month it is a day of atonement, it shall be a holy occasion for you. You shall afflict yourselves, and you shall offer up a fire offering to the Lord. You shall not perform any work on that very day, for it is a day of atonement, for you to gain atonement before the Lord your God. For any person who will not be afflicted on that very day shall be cut off from its people. And any person who performs any work on that day, I will destroy that person from amidst its people. You shall not perform any work. This is an eternal statute throughout your generations in all your dwelling places. It is a complete day of rest for you, and you shall afflict yourselves on the 9th of the month of the evening. From evening to evening you shall observe your rest day. Fifth portion, chapter 23 of Leviticus. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, On the 15th day of this 7th month it is the festival of Sukkot, the 7-day period to the Lord. On the first day it is a holy occasion, you shall not perform any work of labor. For a 7-day period you shall bring a fire offering to the Lord. On the 8th day it shall be a holy occasion for you, and you shall bring a fire offering to the Lord. It is a day of detention, you shall not perform any work of labor. These are God's appointed holy days, that you shall designate them as holy occasions, on which to offer up a fire offering to the Lord, burnt offering and meal offering, sacrifice and libations, the requirement of each day on its day, apart from the Lord's Sabbath, and apart from your gifts, and apart from all your vows, and apart from all your donations that you give to the Lord. But on the 15th day of the 7th month, when you gather in the produce of the land, you shall celebrate the festival of the Lord for a 7-day period. The first day shall be a rest day, and the 8th day shall be a rest day. And you shall take for yourselves on the first day the fruit of the hadar tree, date palm fronds, a branch of a braided tree, and willows of the brook, and you shall rejoice before the Lord your God for a 7-day period, and you shall celebrate it as a festival to the Lord for 7 days in the year. It is an eternal statute throughout your generations that you celebrate it in the 7th month. For a 7-day period you shall live in booths. Every resident among the Israelites shall live in booths, in order that your ensuing generations should know that I had the children of Israel live in booths when I took them out of the land of Egypt. I am the Lord your God. And Moses told the children of Israel these laws of the Lord's appointed holy days. All right, cool. So that's the end of the second day's reading. This covers the holiday of Sukkot, as well as the counting of the Omer. And so these are both going to be very essential, but also just in general denotations of various different things that we see here. All in all, it's very important to keep in mind the collective information related to not just the miracle of being taken out of the land of Egypt, but also being sustained and how they lived throughout those years in exile, in wandering, and so on. Taken under the wing of the Lord, but still enduring quite a few different things that will always be remembered. Now moving on to the day 3 material for the 17th of Nissan, chapter 13 of Exodus, first portion. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Sanctify to me every firstborn, every one that opens the womb among the children of Israel, among man and among animals, it is mine. Moses said to the people, Remember this day when you went out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage, for with a mighty hand the Lord took you out of there. And therefore no leaven shall be eaten. Today you are going out in the month of spring. Second portion, chapter 13, verse 5. And it will come to pass that the Lord will bring you into the land of the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, the Hivites, and the Jebusites, which he swore to your forefathers to give you, a land flowing with milk and honey. And you shall perform this service in this month. For 7 days you shall eat unleavened cakes, and on the 7th day there is a festival for the Lord. Unleavened cakes shall be eaten during the 7 days, and no leaven shall be seen of yours in your possession, and no leavening shall be seen of yours throughout all your borders. And you shall tell your son on that day, Because of this the Lord did for me when I went out of Egypt. And it shall be to you as a sign upon your hand, and as a remembrance between your eyes, in order that the law of the Lord shall be in your mouth. For with a mighty hand the Lord took you out of Egypt. And you shall keep this statute at its appointed time, from year to year. Third portion, chapter 13, verse 11. And it will come to pass when the Lord will bring you into the land of the Canaanites, as he swore to you and to your forefathers, and he has given it to you, that you shall give over to the Lord whatever opens the womb, and every miscarriage that opens the womb of an animal which will be yours, the males belong to the Lord. And every firstborn donkey you shall redeem with a lamb. And if you do not redeem it, you shall decapitate it. And every firstborn of man among your sons you shall redeem. And it will come to pass, if your son asks you in the future, saying, What is this? You shall say to him, With a mighty hand did the Lord take us out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. And it came to pass, when Pharaoh was too stubborn to let us out, the Lord slew every firstborn in the land of Egypt, both the firstborn of man and the firstborn of beast. Therefore I slaughter for a sacrifice all males that open the womb, and every firstborn of my sons I will redeem. And it shall be for a sign upon your hand, and for ornaments between your eyes, for with a mighty hand did the Lord take us out of Egypt. Fourth portion, Numbers chapter 28, verse 19. You shall offer up a fire offering, a burnt offering to the Lord, 2 young bulls, 1 ram, and 7 lambs. In the first year they shall be unblemished for you. Their meal offering shall be fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 for each bull, and 2/10 for the ram you shall offer up. And you shall offer up 1/10 for each lamb, for all 7 lambs, and 1 young male goat for a sin offering to atone for you. You shall offer these up besides the morning burnt offering, which is offered as a continual burnt offering. Like these you shall offer up daily for the 7 days, food of the fire offering, a spirit of satisfaction to the Lord. You shall offer up this in addition to the continual burnt offering and its libation. The 7th day shall be a holy convocation for you. You shall not perform any mundane work. So, the biggest takeaway as we conclude this section now for day 3 is the redemption of the firstborn. So this is something where, the Lord says all the firstborns are mine. So a firstborn donkey must be redeemed with a lamb, and if you don't redeem it with the lamb, then the donkey has to be killed. So that's very, it's pretty wild, honestly, like as a statement. But that's just how it goes. And the same thing, the firstborn sons must also be redeemed. Interestingly, it doesn't say to decapitate the children of the human, right? It does say to do that to the donkey, but for a human, it just says, firstborn man among your sons you shall redeem. And rather than it being, and then you kill him if you don't, instead it jumps to the question, what is this? So asking, what's the deal with that? Why are we doing that? What's with this whole redeeming my son thing? And the answer, with a mighty hand did the Lord take us out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. And so on, explaining the entire logic there. The Lord took the firstborns from the Egyptians, and so as a sacrament to that, I kill all the firstborn males of that open the womb, right? Or I slaughter for a sacrifice all males that open the womb, and every firstborn of my sons I will redeem. So now we can go ahead and move on to day 3's Passover readings. Let's keep it on rolling. Now on to the 4th day of Passover reading for the 18th of Nissan. First portion, Exodus chapter 22. When you lend money to my people, the poor person who is with you, you shall not behave toward him as a lender. You shall not impose interest upon him. If you take your neighbor's garment as security, until sunset you shall return it to him. For it is his only covering, it is his garment for his skin. With what shall he lie? And it shall be that if he cries out to me, I will hear, because I am gracious. Second portion, chapter 22. You shall not curse a judge, neither shall you curse a prince among your people. Your fullness offering and your heave offering you shall not delay. The firstborn of your sons you shall give to me. So shall you do with your cattle and with your sheep. 7 days it shall be with its mother. On the 8th day you may give it to me. And you shall be holy people to me, and flesh torn in the field you shall not eat. You shall throw it to the dogs. Chapter 23, verse 1 of Exodus. You shall not accept a false report. Do not place your hand with a wicked person to be a false witness. You shall not follow the majority for evil, and you shall not respond concerning a lawsuit to follow many to pervert justice. Neither shall you glorify a poor man in his lawsuit. If you come upon your enemy's bull or his stray donkey, you shall surely return it to him. If you see your enemy's donkey is lying under its burden, would you refrain from helping him? You shall surely help along with him. Third portion, chapter 23 of Exodus, verse 6. You shall not pervert the judgment of your poor man in his lawsuit. Distance yourself from a false matter, and do not kill a truly innocent person, or one who has been declared innocent, for I will not vindicate a guilty person. You shall not accept a bribe, for a bribe will blind the clear-sighted and corrupt words that are right. And you shall not oppress a stranger, for you know the feelings of the stranger, since you were strangers in the land of Egypt. 6 years you may sow your land and gather in its produce. But in the 7th year you shall release it and abandon it. The poor of your people shall eat it, and what they leave over the beasts of the field shall eat. So shall you do to your vineyard and to your olive trees. 6 days you may do work, but on the 7th day you shall rest, in order that your ox and your donkey shall rest, and your maidservant's son and stranger shall be refreshed. Concerning all that I have said to you, you shall beware, and the name of the gods of others you shall not mention. It shall not be heard through your mouth. 3 times you shall slaughter sacrifices to me during the year. You shall observe the festival of unleavened bread. For 7 days you shall eat unleavened bread, as I have commanded you, at the appointed time of the month of springtime. For then you left Egypt, and they shall not appear before me empty-handed. And the festival of the harvest, the fruits of your labors, which you will sow in the field, and the festivals of the ingathering at the departure of the year, when you gather in the products of your labors from the field, 3 times during the year all your males shall appear before the Master the Lord. You shall not sacrifice the blood of my sacrifice with leaven, and the fat of my festive sacrifice shall not stay overnight until morning. The choicest of the first fruits of your soil you shall bring to the house of the Lord your God. You shall not cook a kid in its mother's milk. 4th portion, Numbers chapter 8, verse 19. You shall offer up a fire offering, a burnt offering to the Lord. 2 young bulls, 1 ram, and 7 lambs. In the first year they shall be unblemished for you. Their meal offering shall be fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 for each bull, and 2/10 for the ram you shall offer up. And you shall offer up 1/10 for each lamb, for all 7 lambs, and 1 young male goat for a sin offering to atone for you. You shall offer up these besides the morning burnt offering, which is offered as a continual burnt offering. Like these you shall offer up daily for 7 days food of the fire offering, a spirit of satisfaction to the Lord. You shall offer up this in addition to the continual burnt offering and its libation. The 7th day shall be a holy convocation for you. You shall not perform any mundane work. So here we get a recap of some of the rather important and significant commandments on how to remain a righteous people as we wrap up the 4th day's reading. So this, of course, pertaining to when you lend garments, how you should treat judges, how you should handle with cattle, even how you should treat things belonging to your enemy. There are still things that require us to be righteous, even when it is not necessarily to our personal benefit, but spiritually it's the right thing to do. Same deal with how we gather our produce and how we make sacrifices and things of that nature. All of this stuff will, of course, be heard in their own unique Torah portions, some of it already covered on this show. So we won't go too much into it, but it's interesting to see these being brought up once again in relation to the holiday of Passover. Now moving on to the 5th day for the 19th of Nissan, chapter 23 of Exodus, verse 12 for the first portion of those. Moses said to the Lord, "Look, you say to me, bring this people up, but you have not informed me whom you will send with me. And you said, I have known you by name, and you have also found favor in my eyes. And now, if I have indeed found favor in your eyes, pray let me know your ways, so that I may know you, so that I may find favor in your eyes, and consider that this nation is your people." So he said, "My presence will go, and I will give you rest." And he said to him, "If your presence does not go with us, do not take us up from here. For how then will it be known that I have found favor in your eyes, and I in your people? Is it not that you will go with us? Then I and your people will be distinguished from every other nation on the face of the earth." 2nd portion, chapter 33, Exodus, verse 17. And the Lord said to Moses, "Even this thing that you have spoken I will do, for you have found favor in my eyes, and I have known you by name." And he said, "Show me now your glory." He said, "I will let all my goodness pass before you. I will proclaim the name of the Lord before you, and I will favor when I wish to favor, and I will have compassion when I wish to have compassion." 3rd portion, chapter 33, verse 20. And he said, "You will not be able to see my face, for man shall not see me and live." And the Lord said, "Behold, there is a place with me, and you shall stand on the rock. And it shall be that when my glory passes, I will place you into the cleft of the rock, and I will cover you with my hand until I have passed by. Then I will remove my hand, and you will see my back, but my face shall not be seen." 4th portion, chapter 34, verse 1. And the Lord said to Moses, "Hew for yourself 2 stone tablets like the first ones, and I will inscribe upon the tablets the words that were on the first tablets which you broke. Be prepared for the morning, and in the morning you shall ascend Mount Sinai, and stand before me there on top of the mountain. No one shall ascend with you, neither shall anyone be seen anywhere on the mountain, neither shall the sheep and the cattle graze facing that mountain." Chapter 34, verse 4. So he, Moses, hewed 2 stone tablets like the first ones, and Moses arose early in the morning and ascended Mount Sinai as the Lord had commanded him. And he took 2 stone tablets in his hand, and the Lord descended in the cloud and stood with him there. And he called out in the name of the Lord. And the Lord passed before him and proclaimed, "Lord, Lord, benevolent God, who is compassionate and gracious, slow to anger, and abundant in loving kindness and truth, preserving loving kindness for thousands, forgiving iniquity and rebellion and sin. Yet he does not completely clear of sin. He visits the iniquity of parents on children and children's children to the third and fourth generations. And Moses hastened, bowed his head to the ground, and prostrated himself, and said, If I have now found favor in your eyes, O Lord, let the Lord go now in our midst, even if they are a stiff-necked people, and you shall forgive our iniquity and our sin, thus secure us as your possession. And he said, Behold, I will form a covenant in the presence of all your people. I will make distinctions such as not been created upon all the earth and among all the nations, and all the people in whose midst you are shall see the work of the Lord, how awe-inspiring it is, that which I will perform with you. Sixth portion, chapter 34, verse 11. Keep carefully what I am commanding you today. Lo, I will drive out from before you the Amorites and the Canaanites, the Hittites and the Perizzites, the Hivites and the Jebusites. Beware lest you form a covenant with the inhabitants of the land into which you are coming, lest it become a snare in your midst. But you shall demolish their altars, shatter their monuments, and cut down their sacred trees. For you shall not prostrate yourself before another god, because the Lord whose name is Jealous One is a jealous God. Lest you form a covenant with the inhabitants of the land, and they go astray after their gods, and they offer sacrifices to their gods, and they invite you, and you eat of their slaughtering. And you take of their daughters for your sons, then their daughters will go astray after their gods, and lead your sons astray after their gods. You shall not make molten gods for yourselves. Seventh portion, chapter 34 of Exodus, verse 18. The festival of unleavened cakes you shall keep 7 days. You shall eat unleavened cakes which I have commanded you, at the appointed meeting time of the month of spring. For in the month of spring you went out of Egypt. All that opens the womb is mine, and all your livestock that bears a male by emergence of ox or lamb. And a firstborn donkey you shall redeem with a lamb. If you do not redeem it, you shall decapitate it. Every firstborn of your sons you shall redeem, and they shall not appear before me empty-handed. 6 days you may work, and on the 7th day you shall rest. In plowing and in harvest you shall rest. And you shall make for yourself a festival of weeks, the first of the wheat harvest, and the festival of the ingatherings at the turn of the year. 3 times during the year shall all your males appear directly before the Master the Lord, the God of Israel. When I drive out nations from before you, and I widen your border, no one will covet your land when you go up, to appear before the Lord, your God, 3 times each year. You shall not slaughter or sprinkle the blood of my sacrifice with leaven, and the offering of the Passover feast shall not remain overnight until morning. The choicest of the first of your soil you shall bring to the house of the Lord, your God. You shall not cook a kid in its mother's milk. So there we had a full 7 portions for the 5th day of Passover. The big thing I want to point out here is about the dialogue with Moses and God, particularly about Moses and his ability to negotiate a pretty good arrangement, and in doing so, find good favor in the eyes of the Lord. It reminds me a lot of Abraham in many ways when he does this, but he basically pushes to say, well, you can't just take us out and then not go with us. You got to be with us. That way we'll know that, we are your people, and so on. And Moses does everything just right in a way that the Lord finds convincing, thoroughly convincing, and he says, very well, I shall do as you have asked and make you a special deal and all these other things that I'm promising. Now from there, we also now move on to the 20th of Nissan for day 6 of Passover, the first portion, chapter 9 of Bamidbar, Numbers, verse 1. The Lord spoke to Moses in the Sinai desert in the 2nd year of their exodus from the land of Egypt in the 1st month, saying, The children of Israel shall make the Passover sacrifice in its appointed time. On the afternoon of the 14th of this month you shall make it in its appointed time, accordance with all its statutes, and accordances you shall make it. Moses spoke to the children of Israel, instructing them to make the Passover sacrifice. So they made the Passover sacrifice in the 1st month, on the afternoon of the 14th day, in the Sinai desert. According to all that the Lord had commanded Moses, so did the children of Israel do. Numbers chapter 9, verse 6, there were men who were ritually unclean because of contact with a dead person, and therefore could not make the Passover sacrifice on that day. So they approached Moses and Aaron on that day. Those men said to him, We are ritually unclean because of contact with a dead person, but why should we be excluded so as not to bring the offering to the Lord in its appointed time with all the children of Israel? Moses said to them, Wait, and I will hear what the Lord instructs concerning you. 3rd portion, chapter 9 of Numbers. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the children of Israel, saying, Any person who becomes unclean from contact with the dead, or is on a distant journey, whether among you or in future generations, he shall make a Passover sacrifice for the Lord. In the 2nd month, on the 14th day in the afternoon, they shall make it. They shall eat it with unleavened cakes and bitter herbs. They shall not leave over anything from it until the next morning, and they shall not break any of its bones. They shall make it in accordance with all the statutes connected with the Passover sacrifice. But the man who was ritually clean and was not on a journey, yet refrained from making the Passover sacrifice, his soul shall be cut off from his people, for he did not bring the offering of the Lord in its appointed time. That person shall bear his sin. If a proselyte dwells with you, and he makes a Passover sacrifice to the Lord, according to the statutes of the Passover sacrifice and its ordinances, he shall make it. One statute shall apply to you, to the proselyte, and to the native-born citizen. Chapter 28, verse 19 of Numbers. You shall offer up a fire offering, a burnt offering to the Lord, 2 young bulls, 1 ram, and 7 lambs. In the 1st year they shall be unblemished for you. Their meal offering shall be fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 for each bull, and 2/10 for the ram you shall offer up. And you shall offer up 1/10 for each lamb, for all 7 lambs, and the young male goat for a sin offering to atone for you. And you shall offer these up besides the morning burnt offering, which is offered as a continual burnt offering. Like these you shall offer up daily for 7 days, food of the fire offering, a spirit of satisfaction to the Lord. You shall offer up this in addition to the continual burnt offering and its libation. The 7th day shall be a holy convocation for you. You shall not perform any mundane work. So once again, we cover quite a few things in this portion, but the one that sticks out is the section where the people ask, what do we do if we were unable to make the offering because we were ritually unclean or far away? So God makes a very specific case for them. He says, that's all right. I'm giving you a makeup day. So if you can't do it on the normal time of Passover, a month later, we're going to have a do-over day if you missed it the first time. But this only applies to people who are either traveling out of town or were ritually unclean the first time. So if you were home and you were able to do it, but you didn't do it, your soul has been cut off from your people. That's just how it is. Also, those dwelling in the land, the proselyte in the land, right? They are able to make one, and the situation is to be considered equal for them just as much as for the traditional Israelite, and for the person born in the land, one law for all the people there. Now, on to the 7th portion. Chapter 13, verse 17 of Exodus. It came to pass when Pharaoh let the people go that God did not lead them by way of the land of the Philistines, for it was near, because God said, lest the people reconsider when they see war and return to Egypt. So God led the people around by the way of the desert to the Red Sea, and the children of Israel were armed when they went up out of Egypt. Moses took Joseph's bones with him, for he, Joseph, had adjured the sons of Israel, saying, God will surely remember you, and you shall bring up my bones from here with you. They traveled from Sukkot, and they encamped in Etham at the edge of the desert. And the Lord went before them by day in a pillar of cloud to cause it to lead them on the way, and at night in a pillar of fire to give them light. Thus they could travel day and night. He did not move away the pillar of cloud by day or the pillar of fire at night from before the people. 2nd portion, chapter 14 of Exodus, verse 1. The Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Speak to the other children of Israel, and let them turn back and encamp in front of Pi-Harot, between Migdol and the sea. In front of Baal-Zephon you shall encamp opposite it by the sea. And the Pharaoh will say about the children of Israel, They are trapped in the land, the desert has closed in upon them. And I will harden Pharaoh's heart, and he will pursue them. And I will be glorified through Pharaoh and through his entire force, and the Egyptians will know that I am the Lord. And they did so. It was reported to Pharaoh that the people had fled, and Pharaoh and his servants had a change of heart toward the people. And they said, What is this that we have done, that we have released Israel from serving us? So he, Pharaoh, harnessed his chariot and took his people with him. He took 600 select chariots, and all the chariots of Egypt with officers over all of them. And the Lord hardened the heart of Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, and he chased after the children of Israel. And the children of Israel were marching out triumphantly. 3rd portion, chapter 14 of Exodus, verse 9. The Egyptians chased after them and overtook them, and camped by the sea, every horse of Pharaoh's chariots, his horsemen, and his force beside Pi-Hahirot, in front of Baal-Zephon. Pharaoh drew near, and the children of Israel lifted up their eyes, and behold, the Egyptians were advancing after them. They were very frightened, and the children of Israel cried out to the Lord. They said to Moses, Is it because there are no graves in Egypt that you have taken us to die in the desert? What is this that you have done to take us out of Egypt? Isn't this thing about which we spoke to you in Egypt, saying, Leave us alone, and we'll serve the Egyptians, because we'd rather serve the Egyptians than die in the desert? Moses said to the people, Don't be afraid. Stand firm and see the Lord's salvation, that he will wreak for you today. For the way you have seen the Egyptians is only today, but you shall no longer continue to see them for eternity. The Lord will fight for you, but you shall remain silent." Fourth portion, chapter 14, verse 15 of Exodus. The Lord said to Moses, "Why do you cry out to me? Speak to the children of Israel and let them travel. And you raise your staff and stretch out your hand over the sea and split it, and the children of Israel shall come in the midst of the sea of dry land. Behold, shall harden the hearts of the Egyptians, and they will come after you. And I will be glorified through Pharaoh, and through all his force, through his chariots, and through his horsemen. And the Egyptians shall know that I am the Lord, when I will be glorified through Pharaoh, through his chariots, and through his horsemen." Then the angel of God, who had been going in front of the Israelite camp, moved and went behind them, and the pillar of cloud moved away from the front of them and stood behind them. And he came between the camp of Egypt and the camp of Israel. And there were the cloud and the darkness, and it illuminated the night, and the one did not draw near the other all night long. And Moses stretched out his hand over the sea. And the Lord led the sea with a strong east wind all night, and he made the sea into dry land, and the waters split. Then the children of Israel came into the midst of the sea on dry land, and the waters were to them as a wall from their right and from their left. The Egyptians pursued and came after them, all Pharaoh's horses, his chariots, and his horsemen, into the midst of the sea. It came about in the morning, watch, that the Lord looked down over the Egyptian camp through a pillar of fire and cloud, and he threw the Egyptian camp into confusion. And he removed the wheels of their chariots, and he led with them with heaviness. And the Egyptians said, "Let me run away from the Israelites, because the Lord is fighting for them against the Egyptians." Fifth portion, chapter 14, verse 26. Thereupon the Lord said to Moses, "Stretch out your hand over the sea, and let the water return upon the Egyptians, upon their chariots, and upon their horsemen." So Moses stretched out his hand over the sea, and toward morning the sea returned to its strength, as the Egyptians were fleeing toward it. And the Lord stirred the Egyptians into the sea. And the waters returned and covered the chariots, and the horsemen, the entire force of Pharaoh coming after them into the sea. Not even one of them survived. But the children of Israel went on dry land in the midst of the sea, and the water was to them like a wall from their right and from their left. On that day the Lord saved Israel from the hands of the Egyptians, and Israel saw the Egyptians dying on the seashore. And Israel saw the great hand which the Lord had used upon the Egyptians, and the people feared the Lord, and they believed in the Lord and in Moses his servant. Chapter 15, verse 1, Exodus. Then Moses and the children of Israel sang this song to the Lord, and they spoke, saying, "I will sing to the Lord, for very exalted is he. A horse and its rider he cast into the sea. The eternal strength and his vengeance were my salvation. That is my God, and I will make him a habitation. The God of my father, and I will ascribe to him exaltation. The Lord is a master of war. The Lord is his name. Pharaoh's chariots and his army he cast into the sea, and the elite of his officers sank into the Red Sea. The depths covered them. They descended into the depths like a stone. Your right hand, O Lord, is most powerful. Your right hand, O Lord, crushes the foe. And with your great pride you tear down those who rise up against you. You send forth your burning wrath that devours them like straw. With the breath of your nostrils the waters were heaped up. The running waters stood erect like a wall. The depths congealed in the hearts of the sea. Because the enemy said, I will pursue, I will overtake, I will share the booty. My desire will be filled from them. I will draw my sword, my hand will impoverish them. You blew with your wind, the sea covered them, they sank like lead into the powerful waters. Who is like you among the powerful, O Lord? Who is like you, powerful in the holy place, too awesome for praises, performing wonders? You inclined your right hand, the earth swallowed them up. With your loving kindness, you led the people you redeemed. You led them with your might to your holy abode. People heard, they trembled. A shudder seized the inhabitants of Philistia. Then the chieftains of Edom were startled. As for the powerful men of Moab, trembling seized them. All the inhabitants of Canaan melted. May dread and fright fall upon them. With the arm of your greatness may they become as still as stone, until your people cross over, O Lord, until this nation that you have acquired crosses over. You shall bring them and plant them on the mount of your heritage, directed toward your habitation which you made, O Lord, the sanctuary, O Lord, which your hands founded. The Lord will reign to all eternity. When Pharaoh's horses came with his chariots and his horsemen into the sea, and the Lord brought the waters of the sea back upon them, and the children of Israel walked on dry land in the midst of the sea, Miriam the prophetess, Aaron's sister, took a timbrel in her hand, and all the women came out after her with timbrels and with dances. And Miriam called out to them, Sing to the Lord, for very exalted is he. A horse and its rider he cast into the sea. Moses led Israel away from the Red Sea, and they went out into the desert of Shur. They walked for 3 days in the desert, but did not find water. They came to Marah, but they could not drink water from Marah, because it was bitter. Therefore it was named Marah. The people complained against Moses, saying, What shall we drink? So he cried out to the Lord, and the Lord instructed him concerning a piece of wood which he cast into the water, and the water became sweet. There he gave them a statute and an ordinance, and there he tested them. And he said, If you hearken to the voice of the Lord, your God, and you do what is proper in his eyes, and you listen closely to his commandments, and observe all his statutes, all the sicknesses I have visited upon Egypt I will not visit upon you, for I, the Lord, heal you. All right, so there was a long, full recap of the escape from Egypt led by God's guidance, as well as the splitting of the sea, the great miracle, the destruction of the Egyptians. And interestingly, all these things happen without the people being told they're happening, right? Everything is told to Moses. He fulfills what he's told, and the people are kind of left in the dark, and they panic, but it all works out, and they come to realize, wow, God is powerful. And this, of course, guides them on their way and keeps them in good care. They also sing. They know exactly what their path forward will be, and the enemies will stay put, too afraid to act upon them. On to the last day, 22nd of Nissan, 8th day of Passover. Torah reading for Achron Shel Pesach. Chapter 15, verse 19, first portion of the 8th day. Every firstborn male that is born of your cattle of your flock you shall sanctify to the Lord your God. You shall neither work with the firstborn of your ox, nor shear the firstborn of your flock. You shall eat it before the Lord your God year by year in the place the Lord chooses you and your household. And if there be any blemish in it, whether it be lame or blind, or any ill blemish, you shall not sacrifice it to the Lord your God. You shall eat it within your cities, the unclean and the clean together, as the deer and as the gazelle. However, you shall not eat its blood. You shall pour it on the ground as water. Second portion. Deuteronomy chapter 16, verse 1. Keep the month of spring and make the Passover offering to the Lord your God, for in the month of spring the Lord your God brought you out of Egypt at night. You shall slaughter the Passover sacrifice to the Lord your God of the flock and the festival sacrifices of the cattle in the place which the Lord will choose to establish his name therein. You shall not eat leaven with it. For 7 days you shall eat with matzah, the bread of affliction. For in haste you went out of the land of Egypt, so that you shall remember the day when you went out of the land of Egypt all the days of your life. Third portion, chapter 16 of Deuteronomy. And no leaven shall be seen with you within all your border for 7 days. Neither shall any of the flesh you slaughter on the preceding day in the afternoon remain all night until morning. You shall not sacrifice the Passover offering within any of your cities which the Lord your God is giving you, except at the place which the Lord your God will choose to establish his name. There you shall slaughter the Passover offering in the afternoon, as the sun sets, at the appointed time that you went out of Egypt. And you shall roast it and eat it in the place which the Lord your God will choose. And you shall turn away in the morning, and go to your dwellings. For 6 days you shall eat matzah. On the 7th day there shall be a halt to the Lord your God. You shall not do any work on it. Fourth portion, chapter 16, verse 9. You shall count 7 weeks for yourself. From the time the sickle is first put to the standing crop, you shall begin to count 7 weeks. And you shall perform the festival of weeks to the Lord your God, the donation you can afford to give, according to how the Lord your God shall bless you. And you shall rejoice before the Lord your God, you and your son and your daughter, and your manservant and your maidservant, and the Levite who is within your cities, and the stranger and the orphan, and the widow who are among you, in the place which the Lord your God will choose to establish his name therein. And you shall remember that you were a slave in Egypt, and you shall keep and perform these statutes. Fifth portion, chapter 16 of Deuteronomy, verse 13. You shall make for yourself the festival of Sukkot for 7 days, when you gather in the produce from your threshing floor and your vat. And you shall rejoice in your festival, you and your son and your daughter and your manservant and your maidservant and the Levite and the stranger and the orphan and the widow who are within your cities. 7 days you shall celebrate the festival to the Lord your God in the place which the Lord shall choose, because the Lord your God will bless you in all your produce and in all the work of your hands, and you will only be happy. 3 times in the year every one of your males shall appear before the Lord your God in the place he will choose, on the festival of Matzah and the festival of weeks, and on the festival of Sukkot, and he shall not appear before the Lord empty-handed. Every man shall bring as much as he can afford, according to the blessing of the Lord your God, which he has given you. Thus concludes the main portions for all 8 days of Passover. Recapping briefly, this conclusion here seems to be just a final reminder, as the people have now reached the end of their time in the desert, and are getting ready to live their lives normally. They shall not forget the commandments. They are being recapped here and adjusted for city living and normal living in the Holy Land, and really wheresoever we go. But beyond that, it's also a consideration of who all will be involved and all of the different things that will go into it. Which holidays commemorated will require everyone to appear before them with a sacrifice before the Lord, and of course to only sacrifice where the Lord designates as a holy place. In other words, without the holy temple, you can't sacrifice somewhere. So that kind of puts us in a little modern day predicament about how to do this, right? But nonetheless, that's it for this week's weekly Parashahcast. Thanks for listening to this special Passover episode. Definitely a change of pace. 8 days condensed into one show in under an hour. So quite a lot to take in. Hopefully you enjoyed yourself. It certainly was a doozy for me, but we've made it through. So thanks for listening. As always, this has been Shmuel Moshe, sharing with you the weekly Torah portion of Pesach, this year of 5784, in the month of Nissan. And I hope you enjoyed what you heard. Until next time, this is Shmuel Moshe with the weekly Parashahcast. I'll see you then. Baruch Hashem.